Nikola Tsolov scored his third feature race victory of 2026 with a composed display at the Red Bull Ring to close the championship lead to just 2 points. The Austrian circuit threw up some amazing on-track action, as it always does, which helped decide the sprint race result as John Bennett took a maiden victory for Trident. Welcome back to the F2 show, everyone. I'm your host, Aaron Harper, and joining me today is Formula 2 journalist Jacob Orcock. Jacob, welcome back. As I said, Austria served up its usual feast of impressive action. What did you make of it all?
It certainly did. Thank you for having me back. Though it was a great weekend, another great weekend of racing. I think the sprint race was something else. Seeing a top three that you wouldn't expect to usually see. Not only with John getting his first win, but also with Rafael Villagomez and Sebastian Montoya up there as well. And then the feature race, once again, it was Nikola Tsolov showcasing why he is up there in the championship battle and continuing his and Campos's incredible form this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Campos and Tsolov have been very, very strong when it comes to Sundays. I really like this weekend. I always look forward to Austria and F2 because it's got that perfect blend of lots of overtaking, and there's still a driving challenge to it because some of the corners you can get wrong, the final two corners especially. But there's also a strategy element come Sunday, and what tire you start on, how hard you push, whether you're gaining enough sort of virtual track position, really is interesting to me on that. As we wake up early this morning on a Sunday in the UK to watch these races. But yeah, it's always fascinating to see how this race plays out because of the different ways you can run the race. So lots to get stuck into. So we'll do exactly that. We're going to be talking about Nikola Tsolov and his feature race win and his general form in 2026, which has been really, really good. Gabriele Mini is still our championship leader, though. We'll look at how he's continuing to maximize most of his weekends. John Bennett is now an F2 winner. We'll talk about the momentum he's got ahead of his home race at Silverstone next week. And it was an up and down weekend for some of the chasing pack in the championship. We'll have a look at where the Red Bull Ring round has left them. And there was a welcome return to form for Oliver Goethe and Sanapol Ithra-Pufazak, who recorded some of their best results in Formula 2. But let's start with feature race winner Tsolov, Jacob. A third feature race victory of the season, as I said in the intro. He's just been so good on Sundays, hasn't he?
He's just, I don't know what it is with him and Campos. It seems to have just absolutely clicked between the two of them. He's obviously in the Red Bull Academy now. He's got that A14 management from Fernando Alonso, and he just seems to be going from strength to strength. You know, coming into Austria, there were the rumours around him going to Racing Bulls in 2027, and you'd expect with some drivers for that to kind of potentially knock them, for them to maybe feel that pressure, but there was no evidence of it at all. It was a controlled performance from him, kind of waiting for that mistake from Alex Dunn in the feature race to really capitalise on that, and not only forcing the mistake, but also knowing when to make the move on him, sending it into turn one, which Chris said in commentary, it's not a place you'd expect a move in that situation. You'd expect him to maybe wait for turn 3 or 4, but he went for it there and made it stick. And even in the sprint race, the incident at turn 3, for him to then fight back and get into the top 10, it's kind of one of those things where you watch him and he's just maximising every weekend, and his maximum pace is the race victory.
Yeah, it was a really impressive drive, I think, on Sunday, because there was that moment in the pit lane where he didn't hold the brakes enough, and it meant the stop was slow because they couldn't drop the car or get the wheels on the rear quickly enough. So he almost lost the lead to Gabriele Mini there. And then he did lose it to Alex Dunn shortly after. And you thought, Dunn's looked really quick, and this might just be his breakthrough. But it was really bizarre because we saw it in the sprint race. It was the chasing car that managed to keep the tyres alive. I mean, my only summation of that was, I think it might have been Alex Brundle that explained this on the commentary, that you're not putting as much energy through the tyre because you've got the DRS to catch up, and you don't then have to stress the tyre because the straights, you're just gaining time all the way. So maybe that was part of the strategy, seeing what John Bennett had done on Saturday and executing that. But I just thought Nicholas stayed so composed. And if you think, what is a sort of quintessential Red Bull driver. You think really aggressive, going after overtakes at all opportunities and not letting someone just sit in front of them. But
Mm.
actually, this was really well managed, really composed, picked his moment, and when he went, he was gone. He waited for Dunn to sort of fall off that cliff and made the absolute most of it. And then Gabriele Mini did more or less the same, while
Yeah.
Dunn was just being a bit of a bus, holding everybody else up, which was mildly hilarious from the sofa. Probably not so funny for
From
Alex Dunn,
experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
from behind the steering wheel. But I thought Tsolov really took that opportunity, built that little cushion over Mini, eased it home. Really impressive stuff, and deservedly right in the hunt for the championship at the moment as we approach halfway through the season. That said, I mean, there's been points where he's led the championship and he's obviously got 4 wins this season, including a sprint victory in Miami. What do you want to see from Nicola, if anything, to see him really take charge of this title race? Because I just feel it's a bit like with Leo Fornaroli last season. When that momentum comes, he might just take it away from everyone and be near on unstoppable. What do you think he needs to do? What do you want to see from him to do that?
I think he just needs to carry on what he's doing, really. I think at the moment he's so strong within the Campos team. The relationship they have is so strong. It's one of those situations where I feel they need to kind of build on what they've got. I think maybe his Saturday performance is an element that he could work on. You know, getting the start that he needs potentially in the sprint, and then kind of fighting his way up and being more aggressive in that sense. I think Sunday he looks strong, and I think that's where his main points haul is going to come from, and I think that's where his strength will be. But I think if we're going to nitpick in a sense and say where he needs to improve, let's say Saturday, but in reality, I do feel it's more kind of keeping that consistency and maintaining it through the season. You know, last year we saw with Alex Dung, started the season off really strong, looked like he was set to win the championship, and then kind of fell off in the middle to second half of the season. And I think there's a chance this could happen with Nicola, in that he builds up that consistency and then he has one bad weekend and then it knocks in massively. You know, we saw in Miami him getting taken out and it wasn't as strong potentially there. I think there's a risk of it happening if he has a poor weekend. You know, we've got a very long season ahead of us. But I do think if he can keep this mentality, keep this kind of level head that he's got as well, I think that's one of the big things that he's had this season. Is in past years we have seen him have a bit of a hot head, a bit of a temper, shall we say. But I think he's cooled that this season. And yeah, I think if he can just continue where he's going, him and Campos will go from strength to strength. And at that point, it becomes a case of when does he win the championship, not if.
No, absolutely. I'm just having a look at his results here. He scored obviously the 10 points in Miami for the sprint race victory, but then he's only scored one result other than a single point outside of that victory, which was in the Barcelona sprint race. The Monaco point was the fastest lap, and he grabbed a point on Saturday in Spielberg. So, yeah, I think just maybe massaging those Saturday points scores up a little bit will just give him that edge over the others, because he's getting the job done in terrific style on Sundays. But he's still 2 points behind Gabriele Mini, who leads the championship still, despite not having won since Miami. But he's still maximizing the weekends, and that's what he says he is aiming to do. And it was another podium finish for him. That is his, let me have a look. So 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth podium of the season. Thank you for everyone listening or watching for sticking with me while I counted to 5. But yeah, he's doing really well. I think he's bounced back really well after that tricky Monaco feature race, because it looked like, yes, he'd scored lots of points and he was doing quite well, but I just felt there was another level that he and MP could have gone to. And I feel like they took half of that step forward this weekend, because he qualified 4th and then was very much in the hunt for the victory all the way through the race on Sunday. I think we're seeing that elevation from him and MP. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think they know they've got a massive fight on their hands here. They know that they can go and win this championship, and not only just win it, they can really go for it this year, I think. But I think what we're seeing with Gabby this year is something that we saw with Leo last year, and that it's just consistency that matters. He knows that on some weekends he won't have the pace to win the race. You know, he won't have the pace to maybe fight Tsolov or potentially even Noel Leon. He won't have the pace, but he knows that if he can finish second or third or even fourth, he can bring in the points and keep himself in that championship fight in a sense. And I think it's really important now that he recognises that, as opposed to later on in the season. Like you said, I think the Monaco feature race was tricky for him, and I came on here and I could remember I slated him for it, and I said it was a really poor weekend from him, and it would have been very easy for him to let his head drop and lose the championship lead at the following round, but he's not done that. Yes, he hasn't won a race, but he's got the maximum points haul that the car allows, and he's been in the fight, kind of always fighting for the race win in a sense. This weekend didn't quite have enough, but I think if MP bring it all together in a weekend and they bring all the factors together, then that's when we'll see Gabby go into a different league. We know he's got it. We know it's there. But right now he is just maximising everything that he can. And I think that's the sign of a world champion. When they can bring what they can from each weekend together into a good result, that's the sign of, in my eyes, a future F1 driver. I think we're seeing that with Alex Dunn as well this year. They're both, and I think the four drivers we're seeing it from, Alex Dunn, Nikola Tsolov, Rafa Kamara, and Gabriele Mini. I think those four are the ones who know consistency is what wins championships and brings you into the championship fight. And they are the ones that are maximising the points out of their car every weekend, maximising what they can from their qualifying position. And I think that is what will win one of those four championship this year.
No, absolutely. It's that consistency, bringing the points make prizes at the end of the day. And just to add to the stat earlier, I actually miscounted. It's 6 podiums for Gabriele Mini this season. I missed off his Barcelona sprint second place, but those points are flowing in really nicely for him and for all of those that you mentioned in the top 4. I do think that he does need another victory, and I think I might have mentioned this before. I'd like to see him have that dominant victory. Yes, the Miami victory was really well executed, good speed, took his opportunity and ran with it, stealing the win at the last lap. But I'd like to see him control the race from the front, be the fastest driver. And that's what I want to see from him and MP, because I know MP can deliver the car, and I know that Gabriele has got the speed to do it. It's just got to come together at the same time, and he's got to be delivering and they've got to be providing. And then we'll see exactly what that partnership is capable of. That said, they're not hitting what everyone I would assume is considering their potential in terms of just how good they can be. And yet Gabriele leads the way in the Drivers' Championship. Let's move back to Saturday before we have a look at some of those other drivers that you've mentioned. John Bennett took his first Formula 2 podium, and it was a victory, no less. What a way to do it. He's quite good around the Austria Red Bull Ring circuit. He had a reverse grid pole there last year in the Van Amersfoort, but this year, getting the launch from the front row, second on the grid, conceded the lead to Montoya, and I thought maybe Montoya might just have this covered, and yet the way the circumstances played out, Montoya struggled to get the tyres back up to temperature following the late virtual safety car, and John took his chance. And this was the Red Bull Ring layout, providing the racing at its absolute best, the multiple DRS zones, and that last opportunity at turn 4 to make the move. And to be fair, Montoya did a brilliant job in defending as well as he possibly could. And yet John just had the extra tyre life to deal with it. And they were battling so hard that even Rafa Villagomez could have got in there and stolen it away from the pair of them. It was F2 at its absolute best, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, kudos to all three of them. I think whichever one of them had won the race, I would have been really happy with, because all three of them haven't had the easiest start to the season, but they deserve a victory. And I think out of the three of them, John probably is the most deserving. I think there have been times this season where I've watched him up against his teammate, Lawrence Van Hopen, and I've gone, is he on the same level? Is Lawrence just a class above? But Trident have always been very kind of adamant in that John's time is coming and he is on the same level. And I think this weekend, I didn't expect it from him at all. I will admit I'd expected him to slip down the order a bit at the start, but as you said, he got the launch, he took the lead, and while yes, he lost it, it was the belief that he still had the pace in the car, he still had the tyres left to make the move on Montoya, and it shows Trident going from strength to strength once more. It shows that they really do have the pace this year. Do they have the pace to keep up with the likes of Campos and NP in the feature race? Probably not. But in the sprint race, is that where they can really pick up podiums and trophies? Absolutely. And we've seen it with Lawrence, where he's been on the podium in the opening few races, but we hadn't seen it with John yet. And now they've got both drivers in the points and in the podium positions as well. The confidence boost that's going to give not only the drivers, but also the team to know they've got two podium scoring drivers is going to be monumental. And I think Trident in recent race weekends have slipped back a bit and haven't been up the front like they could have been. But this will be a huge boost for them. And like you said, coming into John's home race weekend, I really feel they could be right up there in the sprint race. They now have the belief that they know they can win races. They know they can score podiums. They know they can score points. They know they've got a quick car beneath them. So that belief within the team for both drivers as well, it can't be underestimated. And for John as well, his first season with Van Amersfoort was tricky. You said he scored the podium in Austria last year, I think it was. But to come here with Trident and to see your teammate scoring the points and podiums that he has been, he will have known the paces in the car, but I will imagine his kind of self-belief in a sense will have dropped, in a sense that he would have been like, well, where's my podium? Where are my points? So for him to finally get that right before Silverstone as well, that's absolutely massive for him. And I was really pleased for him on a personal level, because going from GB3, I think it was, straight up to F2, that's a big step. And he was always bound to struggle in a sense in his first season. So for his second season, for him to kind of be right up there and to finally get his race win is fully deserved. And I'm excited to see him to go from strength to strength.
Yeah, I think we're finally starting to get to see what John can do in an F2 car, because like you say, you make that massive jump from GB3 to F2, skipping F3. And he even referenced it in the press conference after the race, saying he had a lot to learn in Formula 2, and not least the tracks, because he hadn't raced at some of these venues until he arrived at them back end of 2024 and all the way through 2025. So he was getting his first taste of them. And I think we're now starting to see he's going back to circuits. He's building on that foundation that he developed with Van Amersfoort last year alongside Villagomez. Now he's got a really good benchmark in Van Hoopen, who's already shown that he can lead that Trident team. And I think this weekend was the first time we all looked at the timing sheets and went, John Bennett is ahead of Van Hoopen, and it is clearly John who is doing the better job this weekend. Van Hoopen really struggled for whatever reason. He finished ahead of him in the feature race, but that was strategy dependent. Up until the sort of latter stages, John did a really good job, even on Sunday. So I think we're really starting to see the best of him, and we're seeing Trident continue to make their progress. So that's really positive for the Italian team, and really good to see for a team that really struggled last season. That seems as well to be able to do no wrong in Formula 3 and deliver champions, but yet they were towards the back in Formula 2. So really positive for them. Let's have a look at some of the other championship contenders now. You mentioned Alex Dahn and Rafael Kamara earlier on, and Noel Leon, but also Dino Beganovic. It was a really tricky weekend for him. No points across the weekend. That's not good news for him, but he did get to drive a Ferrari Formula One car, so maybe it balances out. Noel Leon, obviously, feature race pole position, but then went backwards in the race. Rafa Kamara threatened to do a little bit more than P4, but he was one of those who got caught mostly behind Alex Dahn as his tyres collapsed. It's a real weekend of mixed fortunes for those guys. Dahn had a solid enough sprint race as well, so it wasn't all bad for him, but I think there was definitely more that he could have done. Camera had a penalty after the sprint race. That's points lost. So my question here, I suppose, is are these guys at risk of losing touch with the lead duo if this sort of form continues?
It's a tricky question, that. I think at this stage in the championship and this stage in the season, not yet. I think if we kind of reach Monza and Madrid and this form is kind of becoming the norm, then that's when alarm bells will be ringing and they'll go, right, lads, come on, what's going on here? I think if we look at all three of those drivers, Dino, you mentioned he got to drive a Ferrari F1 car, and shoot me if you will, I'm a bit scornful about the FP1s in a sense for some of these drivers. I think with Dino, did that knock him for this weekend? Quite possibly. Did that impact and hamper his qualifying performance, stepping from F2 to F1 to F2 again? That's a big challenge for these drivers. So I think that probably impacted his weekend quite a bit. And then Rafa and Alex simply didn't really have the pace to keep up with the front two in the end. I think with Alex, if he hadn't made that mistake at the final corner, could he have gone on to win the race? Yes. It would have been a defensive masterclass, I fear, but I think he could have won it in a sense, and then that going in Silverstone would have been big for him. But they both know they have the pace. They both know they have the pace to win races this season, and I think for both of them, it's a matter of time before they're back kind of on the top step again. But this weekend will be a learning curve for them both. They will have learned a lot from it, but I think it's too early to say that they're falling behind in the championship. I think, yes, if this continues, then absolutely. And I think looking ahead to Silverstone and Spa and Budapest, those 3 rounds for those 3 drivers is going to be really, really crucial in building that momentum and building that confidence back up again. Because, like you say, Tsolov and Mini have kind of been in a league of their own the last couple of races, excluding kind of Monaco for Mini. And I think Kamara, Dunn and Beganovic will kind of be stood there going, well, what's missing for us at the moment? Where's our pace gone? But I think Silverstone is an opportunity for them to redeem themselves. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was, who was it? I think Alex has done quite well here in the past, and Dino. I think Rafa last year in F3, he may have struggled. I may have got that completely wrong and he probably went on to win it or something, but I think he struggled here last year. I'm going to have to check that when I go back to you in a minute. But yeah, I think it's an opportunity for them to redeem themselves and an opportunity for them to get back up the front again.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think Alex Dunn finished on the podium at Silverstone last year behind Jack Crawford. So it's a circuit that he has gone well at. And I think you mentioned those 3, and obviously Noel Leon was included in that. He got the pole on Friday, but his race pace just didn't quite come together in the same way that it did for Tsolov. But we have seen those flashes of speed from Noel Leon, mostly on Saturdays. I think if he can put that Sunday feature race together, he can really elevate his championship hopes. So, yeah, like you say, not all lost yet. Still a long way to go. We're not yet at the halfway stage of this season. And who knows what's going to happen with the final couple of rounds towards the end of the year, whether they will be in Qatar and Abu Dhabi or whether they will be elsewhere. Let's
And
have
I
a look.
was right. Hang on, I was right with Rafa Kamara. He did fail to score points in the feature race and finished 8th in the sprint race. So it is a circuit he struggled at in the past. So see how that goes this year for him.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep an eye out on his form in Silverstone. Let's have a look at a couple of drivers who enjoyed their return to form on Sunday. Oliver Goethe, finally an F2 podium scorer, and Tsanopol Inthapurufazak back in the points for the first time since the opening round in Australia. Of course, he did miss the 2 races in Montreal because of a crash in qualifying. But I think for me, for Oliver Goethe, that podium was so deserved because he has had nothing really but bad luck almost ever since he got into a Formula 2 car in the middle of 2024, replacing Franco Colapinto at MP. And it's just, he's seen his teammates winning races, challenging for championships, and yet it just seemingly refused to go right for him. Finally, the car didn't break down. He didn't make a mistake. He wasn't caught up in someone else's collision. And he had all the pace that he needed and the strategy that came together in Austria, and he delivered that podium in magnificent style. I particularly enjoyed his overtake around, I think it was Dunn and Kamara, as they were all battling away because Dunn was just driving the widest and slowest car known to man at that point of the day. And he swept round the outside, off he went. Obviously, if they hadn't lost quite as much time in that fight, he might have been able to win the race on that strategy. I think he certainly had the speed to do it, but that's racing. It didn't quite work out for him, but he was so happy for that podium result, and it's much deserved. Talk to me about Tsanopol and Inthapurufazak, someone you've watched quite recently in Formula 3. Great to see him back in the points and delivering for ART. And we've seen ART have these peaks with Kushmaini. Now we're seeing one with Tsanopol as well.
I think with Taz, it took him a while to settle into ART. Obviously, coming from F3, where he wasn't kind of right up the front. He was there, but he wasn't right up the front. And with going from Campos to ART, it's a completely different environment in a sense. So I think he struggled with that step up. But one thing I noticed with him in both Monaco and Barcelona is even when results don't go his way necessarily, he always keeps his head up. There's always a positive for him. He had his friends in Monaco, I'm pretty sure it was, and he was always laughing and positive with them. And I think with Taz, he has that self-belief, which other drivers don't necessarily have. I think he always knew that his time was going to come again at some point. I think Melbourne provided him with that initial confidence, and then he continued to struggle for a bit. The pace for ART has always been there. We've seen that with Kush. We've seen glimmers of that with him. So no, I think Taz's result there is big for him, and I think he could have done really, really well in the sprint too had he not been involved in that incident where Kamara decided to make everyone else a bowling ball and send them all out of the race. But no, I think Taz in F3 is a different kind of driver to Taz in F2 now. I think he's got a lot more self-belief, a lot more almost comfortability within ART. I feel like he's a lot more comfortable, a lot more himself in a way. I say that. I saw a bit of him in F3, and I feel the environment within ART suits him a lot more than it did, say, in Campos. And I think the first few races he has struggled a bit to adapt to the F2 environment, but this weekend is the Taz that I knew was always there, and the Taz that was always kind of capable. I think a podium is the next step for him, and I don't think it's far away at all. I think this weekend, I've said it with a lot of the drivers now, but I think this weekend really will give him the confidence to push forward and to really have that belief within him and the team moving forward.
Absolutely. Hopefully these are the first of many positive results for Oli Goethe and Tsanopol Inthapurufazak. Before we move on to the standings as they are leaving Austria, a couple of honourable mentions, one from each of us. I'm going to go with Sebastian Montoya. I thought his sprint race was really well executed in a Prema that has lacked speed at times this season. He even said that the car isn't where they want it to be and they think it should be. So it was nice to see Prema back at the front and Sebastian doing a really good job with that. Jacob, who would you give an honourable mention to this weekend?
I think my honourable mention has to go to my good friend Rafael Villagomez. He's always had that pace. He's always been there. And he's been with Van Amersfoort for a while now. So to see him get that podium in the sprint race, I was really, really pleased for him, because obviously he missed the one in Montreal with his mistake. But no, really happy from there. And I think if he hadn't had the incident in the feature race, he could have been right up there. And I think this is Van Amersfoort really making strides now in F2 with not only him, but Nico Verone as well. They're both. It wasn't Verone's weekend, but I think this weekend shows that they have the pace to compete right up at the front in both the feature race and the sprint race. So, no, honourable mention for Villagomez. Very happy for him to get that podium and looking forward to seeing what he can do in Silverstone.
Absolutely. I mean, Villagomez, that's his first points of the season. And if you've been watching F2 all year long, you might be surprised to hear that, because he has delivered some really good races and yet he hasn't got it across the line. But this time he did. As we wrap up then, let's have a look at the championship standings. As I've mentioned at the top of the show, the championship lead is down to 2 points. It's shrunk again, having expanded last time out in Barcelona. Mini and Tsolov leading the way. Rafael Kamara is third, 26 points behind, and he is 2 points ahead of Alex Dunn. Oliver Goether's podium moves him up to 12th, and John Bennett's victory has him up to 16th. In the teams standings, Campos remain in control, with MP Motorsport now their closest challengers, 32 points behind. Rodin are a further 8 back from them. Trident are now just 5 points off of Dams, who are in 5th, so a big fight developing for 5th in the championship. And VAR are now above AIX thanks to Villagomez's sprint race podium on Countback. They're both on 20 points at the foot of the table, but VAR have that all-important podium finish. So that is all for today. My thanks to Jacob for joining me. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to stay up to speed with everything Formula 2. There's also more content on our website and in our Discord server, which is linked in the description. Before we go, I want you to tell me, is Nikola Tsolov now the championship favourite with his momentum and his results this season as we head towards the midpoint of the season? Tell me that in the comments. Formula 2 heads to the home of British Motorsport next at Silverstone in just a few days, so there's a chance for drivers to build more momentum or bounce back from disappointment in Austria. So from the track to your headphones, this has been the F2 Show.